He and Mama took me and my family on countless holidays, and if there were any events we were both invited to, we shared a car every time. So from that, I think we can all deduce that I spent a hell of a long time with him. I've learned a lot from him. He taught me the value of humility. In fact, he did it very well. See, I actually didn't know how much he did for his family, friends, and his patients until quite recently. While some might say he worked himself into an early grave, I would say he worked many people out of their early graves. He also had a burning passion for innovation. He would always tell me about the newest botanical discoveries and was very passionate about his culture, as he would often explain how we are older than Sanskrit and basically superior to any other culture, especially Sinhalese. I remember once I was at Tim and Amar's place playing FIFA, and he came in and said, "Oh, are you watching the football?" And I just turned around and raised my eyebrow. I was just like, "No, it's a game." And then his jaw just dropped, and he was just amazed at how real it looked, even though it was like FIFA 15. And he just still couldn't believe it. And I overheard him talking to Amama about it, like no one had ever seen it before. And I don't know, that story just made me really appreciate how proud he was of me. Not me playing FIFA, but he would often tell his friends and family about any of the accomplishments me or my sister had made. With such great pride, it almost felt like he was being sarcastic, but he wasn't, and it would make me feel amazing, and make anyone else he talked about feel amazing. But what I really miss about Tata is the little things. Knocking on Amman Tata's door to find Amma having to walk up 3 flights of stairs, yelling as usual before opening it, and then see Tata emerge from his man cave of a home office about half a minute later, even though it's right next to the front door. Or if I stayed at his and Amma's, I'd wake up every morning to see him panting on the cross trainer, which was right next to my bed. And I mean, apart from that, I think personally Tata's loss was the biggest loss I've experienced in my life. And I'm not very good with emotions, if you know me, especially within my family. But I think I sort of had that in common with Tata. While he was incredible at bringing the best out of people and is praised for his ability to crumble our family arguments, I noticed, especially near the end of his life, he didn't want to disturb the peace in the family, even when we were all wary of his impending death. He was so selfless that on the last day that his wife, children and grandchildren got to be with him, he was struggling to walk 5 meters using a walker to get from his armchair to his bed. And yet he managed to treat the day like any other, which in hindsight I think was to save our feelings more than his. He has had a great impact on all of our lives. I know that I will miss him and continue to miss him, as he was just that special to me, as I know he was to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Arden. I thought Sri wanted to say a few words. Okay, then let's bat on and let me call Aingaran, who is Siva's youngest brother's elder son, a senior scientist, and he is speaking on Siva's love for music and culture. May I call upon Aingaran? Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Nalliah, and thanks everyone. Periyappa loves Tamil. Yeah. You might have heard. If language is the roadmap of a culture, then Periyappa was one of Tamil's leading compasses. Language is, of course, a fluid concept, ever-flowing and changing to keep up with modern advances, while reminding us all of our past. On this roadmap are familiar hotspots of foods, fine arts,
architecture, and spirituality that with great effort and diligent direction can withstand the erosions of time. Born into a literary musical culture in Sri Lanka that both thrived and struggled during his lifetime, authentic adherence to Elam Tamil culture's core identifiers and values was understandably of the utmost importance to Periyappa. Authenticity that brought the words of literary giants Avvayar, Eelattu Poodan Devanar, and Thiruvalluvar to his young ears and ensured that they were passed down. Authenticity that kept the Carnatic currents of Subbalakshmi, Jayashri, Sudha, and Samya flowing in his home. Authenticity that ensured the latest Nadahan dramas were beamed to his living room. Why? Because culture provides historical pride that in turn nurtures self-esteem. Periyappa loved Carnatic music. His long support of cultural events at the Nayanadi Manivarkale Welfare Association, the Madras Music Season in Chennai, as well as his own organisations, NIOT, and on GTV, was rooted in this generational effort to memorialise culture. His three daughters carried this torch on through their study of the arts, which has in turn been passed down to their children. Periyappa loved food. Porichamin, Pusanikai curry, Idiyappam and Sodi, mutton rolls, vada, you name it, he loved it. Much to the appreciation of Periyamma when a great Jaffna dish was served, or to her mighty displeasure when his garden vegetable patches became a massive eyesore. To him, they were a way the garden served a higher purpose. He did, however, feed far more than he ate, through the many acts of altruism, as we have all heard, but mainly through force-feeding his kids when they kept resisting a meal. Mahal saapade, mahal saapade. In his later years, his cultural interests expanded. His grandchild's recent choir performance at the Vatican was a particularly proud moment for him. His palate grew to savour other cuisines just as lovingly as his native one. Perhaps the esteem from successfully promoting Tamil culture in his orbit gave him the confidence to try different things, new things, to find out what higher purpose that too could serve. It appears now more than ever that adaptation is key to successfully preserving connectivity within and between growing communities still trying to find themselves in changing times and places. Periyappa too began to realise this with the loss of fluency in the Tamil language he witnessed with the diaspora's younger generation, with the all too familiar resistance to memorising ancient Qurans and other hymns. But sometimes he too liked to be reminded that part of the thrill and success in discovering, learning, preserving and growing a cultural identity can be by going in mapless. Following Periyappa's example, we all have a lot to live up to. However, our paths need not be the exact same. A symphony need not have every instrument play the same notes for a piece to be in perfect harmony. And so, as a young Shakespeare reminds us all, if music be the food of love, then just play on. Rest easy, Periyappa, and thank you all.
Ayangaran, thank you very much for that lovely synopsis of his love for culture and language. Thank you. Now let me call upon Aruran, who is one of Siva's nephews. He's going to enlighten us with Siva's love of garden and nature. Let me call upon Aruran.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here today. For me, Periyappa embodied many of the best ideals of humankind. There was Periyappa the family man, devoted husband of over 40 years, father to 3 spirited daughters, grandfather to 4. The uncle who was there by my side with my aunts and my cousins when I made my first trips abroad to the US and France at the tender ages of 5 and 6. There was Periyappa, the political activist and commentator, who would sit on his chair in his downstairs family room of his home and talk for hours to anyone who would listen about Sri Lankan politics, the Modi government, and any other political issue of the day. There was Periyappa the doctor and mentor, the doctor who devoted his life to public service and helping people get better. The man whose service to the medical profession transcended his own lifetime through the mentoring of his daughter, many of his nephews and nieces, and countless others before, during, and after medical school. But there's another Periyappa I'd like to talk about today. The Periyappa of nature, sustainability, and social justice. You see, I deliberately grouped these three together because I believe they were very much how Periyappa thought about the world. Three complicated topics that were often so interconnected in their impact on each other and wider society. Now, I'm sure most people in this room have heard about Periyappa's famous vegetable garden. It's a small vegetable garden surrounded by a short fence which sits within a much larger garden in a family home. That vegetable garden was a passion of Periyappa's. He would tend to it day after day, year after year. I still remember the first time he showed me that vegetable garden. You could see the pleasure that it gave him, an almost childlike pleasure. And etched in my memory of that day was his smile that so many of us are familiar with. That peaceful, comforting, and gracious smile, those perfect white teeth. When I left for home that day, Periyappa gave my wife and I some of his homegrown tomatoes. I was amazed by how juicy and ripe they were. There was no doubt in my mind that Periyappa has shown as much love and compassion to those tomatoes as he so often did to his family and people in his care. But Periyappa didn't see his actions in that vegetable garden as those of just another amateur gardener. He saw it as a small contribution to something much bigger. Periyappa would often talk about planting thousands of trees in his native Sri Lanka. But this wasn't a vanity project. He saw these trees as a way of helping the local people achieve a more sustainable way of life. A way of empowering them so they were less reliant on multinational corporations that he believed did not look out for the soil and environment as well as the local community would. His goal in planting those trees was to make the world that little bit fairer, a little bit more just. A few years back, Periyappa gave me a book and insisted I read it. The title of that book was The Ideas of Justice. The Ideas of Justice. Written by Indian economist and Nobel laureate Amartya Sen. If ever there was a book that could have been written for Periyappa, this was it. I was rereading The Ideas of Justice recently. And one passage stood out for me, and I'll read it verbatim. Even though many human activities accompany the process of development may have destructive consequences, it is also within human power to enhance and improve the environment in which we live. Periyappa spent much of his later life thinking of ways to enhance and improve the world in which we lived, so that those who came after him could enjoy the world as much as he did. He did this one small gesture at a time, but believe me, they added up. I want to end by talking about Periyappa the Maverick, the man who challenged the status quo who was always willing to stand up for those less fortunate than him, and a man who never forgot his roots. A man who will be missed, but never forgotten.
Thank you very much, Aurora. That was a very emotional information for us to gather. The next, we have a clip from Dr. Sivananthan in Melbourne, who has sent a message for this particular occasion. Just let me find out whether we can get that play. Yeah.
Greetings from Melbourne, Australia, to every one of you gathered today in London to celebrate the life of Dr. Sivananthan. Greetings from Melbourne, Australia, to every one of you gathered today in London to celebrate the life of Dr. Sivananthan. I am Sivananthan. Sivananthan was my oldest cousin. He also happens to be my brother-in-law, as I'm married to his baby sister. As I recollect some of my personal and treasured memories of my interactions with my cousin Sivananthan, I may also represent the sentiments of all our extended family members scattered throughout the globe. My wife Ramani, the youngest in the family by 16 years to Sivananthan, she always used to say that she didn't really know him when she was growing up because he left home to move to the University of Colombo Medical School and Bloemfontein Hostel. However, I have vivid memories of Dr. Sivananthan, my Periyamachan, being a frequent visitor to our home in Colombo. Whenever he was free on weekends, he visited his Asamama and Mami, my parents. My mum was fond of feeding him. They were so proud of their Periyathambi, as he was known to all the elders in our extended family. He was the first to go to medical school in our family, I guess being the source of unmatched pride for all of them. The way he conducted himself with the family and their adoring love towards him left an indelible mark on me as I was growing up. I reflected on this and spoke to him when it was my turn to go to the University of Colombo Medical School and the famous Bloemfontein. Once he started working as a doctor in Sri Lanka, the highlight to all of us was the love and respect his non-medical staff colleagues displayed towards him. Whilst he had the respect of his superiors and colleagues, it was the effortless manner in which he interacted with staff and people from all backgrounds, and their genuine affection towards him was unmatched. This was very evident when he was working at the Jaffna Hospital doing obstetrics and gynecology training. Once he moved to the UK, Yogesaka and his three precious girls, Anu, Abhi and Adi, were his priority. However, he developed enduring friendships with the UK Tamil community. In fact, whenever we met him, all he talked about were his friends and the work they were doing for the emancipation of our long-suffering kith and kin in Sri Lanka. He was immensely proud of the Medical Institute of Tamils and all the other endeavours generated from the UK. The Tamil cultural identity was an unshakable faith for him, and everything Tamil motivated him for greater things. During his adult life, the most enduring attributes that stood out for me were his integrity, dignity, and and sense of self-esteem about who he was, who we, his family, were, and who we as a Tamil nation. The ego and self-esteem conferred a level of confidence that gave us an edge of arrogance. In Tamil, we describe this as Rumapu or Serukku. Yogesaka was his pillar of strength and everything to him. Without her, he would not have coasted along in his life and work. Yet, he was fiercely independent and never wanted to be a burden to anyone. He was also stubborn to a fault. His girls were his prized gifts and his grandkids were his passion. When Arden, his pride and joy, visited us in Melbourne with him, he made him plant a tree which to this day stands to greet anyone who enters our house. None of us have recovered from the deep sorrow and the shock of losing our beloved Perimacha, Periyan to my wife, and Periyathambi to all the elders in our extended family. Some of us are traumatized by the fact we could not even get to see him in person. COVID pandemic has wrought its havoc, you all know, in the UK better than anyone else. I had the privilege of talking to him many times over the FaceTime video during the last 2 months of his life. It was painful to see him trying to rationalize the natural history of his illness. It was also striking to see the steely determination he had in trying to understand his ailment, decide what was best for his family, and the meticulous planning he undertook to take care of all of his affairs. He did not want to be a burden even for a short time to anybody. He certainly did not want the family to despair. In the end, with the love of his family, prayers and wishes from all those who knew him, and the confidence and arrogance to stare death in its face, he chose to leave us all with the integrity and dignity that defined his entire life. I hope and pray that soon we will be able to travel to UK and be with Yogesaka and the girls and celebrate the life of our beloved Periyamachan, whose loss is irreparable. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts on this special day. Thank you.
Sorry about all that. I think, no, just between the. Sorry about all these technical problems. That was a very endearing speech from message from Australia. Now, let me next call upon Dr. Sarada Nakkunaraja, former president of Medical Institute of Tamils, who will be enlarging on Siva's devotion to me and other voluntary work. Dr. Nalliah.
Ladies and gentlemen, in my introduction, earlier, I referred to 4 medical professionals who established this charitable organization a quarter century ago. It's time for us to meet them and honor them. அவர்களுக்கு அறிமுகம் அனாவசியம் என்றாலும் அவர்களின் பெயரை நான் சொல்ல விரும்புகிறேன். Please give a big hand to Dr. Sinathurai Mahendran, Dr. Nalliah Sivananthan, Dr. Murugesu Selvaratnam. We have a 4th founder, Dr. Veerasingam Nirminathan, who is unfortunately abroad at present. He has asked his family member, Sister Dr. Kuhaini Turaraja, to present him to receive this award. Here they are, ladies and gentlemen, our founders. Dr. Nalliah Sivananthan and Mrs. Sivananthan to the stage. The next is the method. He had a method with the other members on how to go about. There was no election at that time. They had to headhunt. They managed to
Hello. Can we regather for Dr. Nalliah to speak? Yeah, please come in and make yourself comfortable again. Thank you.
Mrs. Sivananthan, family and friends. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for the invitation and also asking me to say a few words on this day. I know Dr. Sivananthan mainly through the MEOT, and during the Silver Jubilee, I got to know him better as I was the president at that time. He is one of the 4 founders of the Medical Institute of Tamils UK. This charity of medical professionals started in 1988, mainly to help the Tamils of the north and east of Sri Lanka and UK. The video you all have watched prior to my speech showed how MEOT honored the founders of this MEOT with clear vision. They serve the Tamils. They felt at that time there was a great need and worked hard, tirelessly to establish this charity MEOT. And these are my following thoughts of Dr. Sivananthan. Dr. Sivananthan was very passionate of Tamil, the Tamils and the homeland. He was always interested in knowing what MEOT is doing and always liked to know the update. His advice during my presidency was genuine and was very useful. MEOT has done so many projects and doing so many at the moment, and within the time allocated, I cannot tell you everything. Siva was there in 2017 for the fundraising event, Health Awareness Project in Mullaitivu. He was overjoyed with this project in war-affected areas. In fact, he even donated some money on the day. It's so unfortunate that he would not be there when it's completed and presented in a way that he would be very proud of MEOT. MEOT has done well so far for 33 years, and I hope some of his vision and dreams have been fulfilled. However, he was always concerned of the future of the MEOT, and it's my feeling, unless the youngsters take over, it will be a failure. Siva constantly talk about Tirukural, and the statue in front of their house is always the answer his feelings. He always says, if people practice Tirukural, they don't need to go to the temple. He admired good deeds and always proud of the Tamils and their Tamils achievement. தோன்றி புகழுடன் தோன்றுக இல்லையே தோன்றாமல் இருப்பது நன்று. Sivananthan lived a full life and has served his community so well. Although he is sadly not with us anymore, I would like to say we are proud of his passion, dedication and achievements. Everything which starts has to come to an end in life. And I like to finish by saying good wishes to his family, and his legacy will always be there in our heart. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sandra. அடுத்து எங்கள் தமிழர் முன்னேற்ற கழகத்திலிருந்து அன்பழகன் இங்கு வந்திருக்கின்றார். அவர் டாக்டர் சிவானந்தத்தை பற்றி தமக்கு தெரிந்ததை சொல்வதற்கு மிகவும் ஆவலாக உள்ளார். அவரை முன்னுக்கு அழைக்கிறோம். திரு அன்பழகன் வாங்க.
வணக்கம். வையத்துள் வாழ்வாங்கு வாழ்பவர் வானுரையும் தெய்வத்துள் வைக்கப்படும். தம் பணியை பின்தள்ளி தமிழ் பணியை முன்னெடுத்து ஆற்றியவர் அமரர் மருத்துவர் நல்லையா சிவானந்தன் அவர்கள். இந்நாட்டில் 1980களில் புலம்பெயர்ந்த நம் பிள்ளைகள் தமிழ் மொழியை கற்று தமிழ் இனம் எழுச்சி பெற வேண்டி தன்னை தமிழர் முன்னேற்றக் கழகத்தில் இணைத்துக் கொண்டு திருவள்ளுவர் தமிழ் பள்ளியின் வளர்ச்சிக்கு அயராது பணியாற்றியவர். எளிமையான தோற்றம் கொண்டவராகவும் இனிமையாக பழகக்கூடியவராகவும் நம்முடன் வளம் வந்தவர். சொல்லும் செயலும் ஒன்று என வாழ்ந்த மிகச்சிறந்த மாமனிதர். எந்த நிலையிலும் தன்னுடைய கொள்கை நிலைப்பாட்டை மாற்றிக்கொள்ளாத உறுதிமிக்கவராக வாழ்ந்தவர் ஐயா நல்லையா சிவானந்தர். எந்த பணியிலும் தன்னுடைய தனித்துவத்தை முத்திரை பதிக்கும் அற்புதமான மனிதர். இளைய சமுதாயம் அறிவிலும் திறமையிலும் பண்பிலும் மேம்பட்டு இருக்க வேண்டும் என்ற உண்மையான அக்கறை கொண்ட சமூக சேவகராக திகழ்ந்தவர். தெளிவான ஆலோசனைகள், உறுதியான முடிவு, மனம் விட்டு பாராட்டும் மாண்பு, தமிழர் நலன் சார்ந்த செயல்பாடுகள் என தரமான அறிவுரைகளை வழங்கி வழி நடத்தியவர். அறிவின் ஆற்றல் மிக்க செயல்களின் கீழ் பல ஆண்டு காலம் திருவள்ளுவர் தமிழ் பள்ளியில் இணைந்து பணிபுரிந்தது வாழ்வின் உன்னதமான தருணமாகும். சிறந்த மேலாண்மை குணங்களை கொண்டவர், நம் நெஞ்சங்களில் என்றென்றும் நிறைந்து இருப்பவர் மருத்துவர் ஐயா சிவானந்தன் அவர்கள். அன்னாரின் ஆன்மா அமைதி பெறவும் எங்களின் வீர வணக்கத்தையும் தமிழர் முன்னேற்றக் கழகம் திருவள்ளுவர் தமிழ் பள்ளியின் சார்பில் தெரிவித்துக் கொள்கிறோம். நன்றி.
நன்றி அன்பர்களே. தமிழ் பள்ளியின் தலைமை ஆசிரியராகிய அம்மா அவர்களே இங்கு வருமாறு அழைக்கிறேன்.
அரிது மானுடர் ஆதரவு என்ற வாக்குத்தினங்கள் திரு டாக்டர் சிவானந்தன் அவர்கள் அந்த வார்த்தையின் அர்த்தத்தை புரிந்து உணர்ந்து வாழ்வை முழுமையாக பயனுடன் வாழ்ந்து எங்களுக்கு மறைந்துள்ளார். மகத்தான குடும்ப தலைவனாக, மாண்பு மிக்க மருத்துவராக, மனித நேயம் மிக்க சமூக தொண்டனாக, உறவினருக்கும் நண்பர்களுக்கும் மனதிற்கினிய நண்பனாக, குடும்பத்தின் மூத்த மகன், உடம் பிறப்புகளின் மூத்த அண்ணன், இப்படி பல கோணங்களிலும் தனி சிறப்புடன் வாழ்ந்து திடீரென மண்ணுலகை விட்டு மறைந்தாலும் எல்லோர் நினைவிலும் நிறைந்துவிட்ட மதிப்புக்கும் மதிப்புக்கும் உரிய டாக்டர் சிவானந்தன் அவர்களின் அருமை பெருமையை போற்றி கொண்டாட நாம் இங்கு கூடியுள்ளோம். இப்படி ஒரு நிகழ்வை ஒழுங்கு செய்தவர்களுக்கு நாம் அனைவரும் நன்றி பாராட்ட கடமைப்பட்டுள்ளோம். ஏனென்றால் அவருடைய இறுதி மரியாதையில் கலந்து கொள்ள முடியாமலும் அவர்கள் குடும்பத்துடன் அவரது பிரிவு துயரை பகிர்ந்து கொள்ள முடியாமலும் போய்விட்ட சூழ்நிலை இன்றைய நிகழ்வு மனதிற்கு ஆறுதல் தரக்கூடியதாக உள்ளது. டாக்டர் சிவானந்தன் அவர்களின் நண்பர்கள், உறவினர்கள், அவர் தொண்டாற்றிய பல ஸ்தாபனங்களில் இருந்தும் பெறக்கூடியுள்ளோம். நான் ஈஸ்ட் லண்டன் தமிழர் முன்னேற்ற கழகம் நடத்தி வரும் திருவள்ளுவர் தமிழ் பள்ளியின் சார்பாக பேச வந்துள்ளேன். இருந்தபோதும் இவரை நான் முதல் சந்தித்தது 1981 ஏப்ரல் மாதம் புரஸ்கேட் ஆஸ்பத்திரியில் நான் பெற்றுக்காக இருந்தபோது இவர் வந்து என்னை பராமரித்துக் கொண்டிருந்தார். அதுதான் எனது முதல் நினைவாகும். தொடர்ந்து டாக்டர் சிவானந்தன் தமிழர் முன்னேற்ற கழகத்தில் உறுப்பினராக 1983ஆம் ஆண்டில் இருந்து 1990ஆம் ஆண்டுகளின் ஆரம்ப காலம் வரை இருந்த அவர் பிள்ளைகள் தமிழ் பள்ளியில் படிக்க ஆரம்பித்தார்கள். தொடர்ந்து பரீட்சையிலும் தேர்ச்சி பெற்றார்கள். திருமதி சிவானந்தன் அவர்களும் பள்ளியில் ஆசிரியராக சேர்ந்து கொண்டார். 1997ஆம் ஆண்டு வரை தொடர்ந்து ஆசிரியர் பணி ஆற்றினார். இவர் குடும்பமே தமிழ் பள்ளிக்கு சேவை புரிந்தனர். இவர் உறுப்பினராக இருந்த காலத்தில் முக்கியமாக உறுப்பினர்களில் ஓரிருவர் தமிழர்களும் மறைந்து விட்டார்கள். அதனால் எனக்கு தெரிந்தவரை நினைவில் இருப்பவற்றை கூறுகின்றேன். டாக்டர் சிவானந்தன் உறுப்பினராக இருந்த போது பல ஆக்கப்பூர்வமான ஆலோசனைகளை முன்வைத்து மிக ஊக்கமாக செயல்பட்டார். தமிழுக்கும் தமிழ் மக்களுக்கும் தொண்டாற்றி முன்னேற்ற வேண்டும் என்பதில் தீவிரமாக இருந்தார். தமிழ் பிள்ளைகளின் கணித அறிவை மேம்படுத்த வேண்டும் என்று மேத்ஸ் கிளாஸ் ஒன்று ஆரம்பிக்கப்பட்டது. அதில் திரு யோகராஜ் அவர்கள் மேத்ஸை கற்பித்தார். அந்த காலத்தில் தமிழை கற்பிக்க போதிய வசதிகள் இல்லை என்பது உங்களுக்கு தெரியும். அதற்கிணங்க அவர் படங்களை வரைந்து காட்டி தமிழை கற்பித்தால் பிள்ளைகள் ஆர்வமாக கற்பிக்கக்கூடும் என்று இவர் ஆலோசனை எடுத்ததற்கிணங்க ஓவியர் கிருஷ்ணராஜா அவர்கள் ஆசிரியராக நியமிக்கப்பட்டார். அந்த காலத்தில் தமிழை கற்பிக்க பொருத்தமான புத்தகங்களோ தட்டச்சோ இருக்கவில்லை. தமிழ் பள்ளியைச் சேர்ந்தவர்கள் பெற்றோர்களும் சேர்ந்து தமிழ் இல்லமுறை ரோட்டில் வாங்கியிருந்தனர். அதில் பல கூட்டங்கள் அடிக்கடி நடைபெறும். அது எல்லாம் எனக்கு நினைவில்லை. அதில் பல தடவை தமிழ் கற்பித்தலை எவ்வாறு முன்னேற்ற முடியும் என்பதை பற்றி பல கலந்துரையாடல்கள் நடக்கும். அதற்கு லண்டனின் பல இடங்களிலிருந்தும் நண்பர்கள் வந்து கலந்து கொள்வார்கள். இதில் அப்பொழுது பிள்ளைகளின் தேவை என்ன என்பதை அவர்களின் வாயிலாக அறிய வேண்டும் என்ற ஒரு கொஷனர் ஒன்று தயாரித்து பிள்ளைகளுக்கு வழங்கப்பட்டது. அதன்படி நாங்கள் அதன் புறப்பத்தை பார்த்து அதன்படி கற்பிக்க ஆரம்பித்தோம். பின்பு இவர் எப்போதுமே ஒரு ஆக்கப்பூர்வமாக எதுவும் செய்ய யோசிப்பார். ஒரு நாட்டிய நாடகம் நடத்துவது நல்லது என்று டாக்டர் சிவானந்தன் சொன்னார். ஒரு நாள் இதை பற்றி நாங்கள் கலந்து ஆலோசித்துக் கொண்டிருந்தோம். அதில் திரு சுரேஷ்குமாராஜா அவர்களும் டாக்டர் சிவானந்தன் நானும் இன்னும் சிலர் இருந்தார்கள். அதில் ஒரு திருக்குறளை மையமாக வைத்து ஒரு நாட்டிய நாடகம் எழுதலாம் என்று கருத்து தெரிந்தார்கள். திரு சுரேஷ்குமாராஜா அவர்கள் சொன்னார்கள், இதனால் இவன் முடிக்கும் என்றாய்ந்து அதனை அவன் கண்விட என்பதன் கருத்து, யாரால் இந்த செயலை சிறப்பாக செய்ய முடியுமோ அவர்களிடத்தில் அந்த செயலை விட வேண்டும். அப்பொழுதானது திறமையாக நடைபெறும் என்று என்பதன் கருத்தாக மத மையமாக வைத்துக்கொண்டு ஒரு நாடகத்தை தயாரிப்பதில் டாக்டர் சிவானந்தன் எல்லாரும் மும்முரமாக இருந்தார்கள். அந்த நாடகத்தை புலவர் சிவானந்தன் அவர்கள் எழுதினார். பாடல் வடிவமாக வடிவமைத்த அதனை சங்கீதத்துவான் மாதிரி சுரேஷ்குமாராஜா அவர்கள் பாடல்கள் பாடினார்கள். அதற்கு ஒரு அற்புதமான கலைஞனாக வழங்கிய யாழ் சீலன் அவர்கள் பின்னணி சமைத்தார்கள். அதனை ராகினி ராஜகோபால் அவர்கள் நெறியாழ்கையில் சிறப்பாக அந்த நாடகம் நிறைவேறியது, அரங்கேற்றப்பட்டது. அதில் இவரது பிள்ளைகள் இருந்தார்கள் நான் நினைக்கின்றேன். அந்த நாடகம் 1988 நடந்ததாக நான் நினைக்கின்றேன். அதுதான் லண்டனில் முதல் நடந்த நாட்டிய நாடகம் என்று நான் நம்புவேன். அந்த காலத்தில் 2 நடன ஆசிரியர்கள் மட்டும் இருந்தார்கள். ராகினி ராஜகோபால் ஈஸ்ட் லண்டன் பள்ளியில் திருவள்ளுவர் பள்ளியில் படித்துக் கொண்டிருந்தார். ஓட்டம் ஸ்டோவில் திரு பத்மனி குணசீல் இருந்தார். இந்த நாடகம் ஓட்டம் ஸ்டோ விடும் அரங்கேற்றப்பட்டது. தமிழ் பள்ளியின் ஊடாக 83 இவர் குடும்பத்திற்கும் எங்களுக்கு மிகவும் நெருக்கமான தொடர்பு ஏற்பட்டது. மிகவும் நண்பர்களாக இருந்தோம். என்றுமே இவர் ஒரு அமைதியாக பேசுவார். கோவித்து பேசி நாங்கள் பார்த்ததில்லை. யாரும் தப்பு செய்தால் கூட ஒரு சிரிப்புடன் சிரிப்புடன் ஏதாவது சொல்வார். நகைச்சுவைகளை மிகவும் ரசித்து வாய்விட்டு சிரிப்பார். இவருக்கு தெரியாவிட்டாலும் யோகேஷ் தெரிந்தவர்கள் யாருக்காவது சோமிலி என்றாலும் உடனே அவர்களுக்கு தயங்காது ஓடி சென்று மருத்துவ உதவி செய்வார். இவர் மற்ற விலங்குகளுக்கு கூட பல தடவை தேவைப்பட்ட போதெல்லாம் அவங்களுக்கு உதவி செய்திருந்தார். இவரது இழப்பு எங்களுக்கு மட்டுமல்ல, தமிழருக்கும் தமிழ் சமுதாயத்திற்கும் மருத்துவ துறையினருக்கும் இன்னும் பல அவர் தொண்டாக்கிய பல நிறுவனங்களுக்கும் பெரும் இழப்பாகும். இருந்த போதும் இவர் எல்லா குடும்பத்தை சிறப்பாக பார்த்ததுடன் மட்டுமல்ல, சமூகத்திலும் சமூக மட்டத்திலும் தமிழர் சமூகத்திற்கும் மருத்துவத்துறைக்கும் பல தொண்டு நிறுவனங்களுக்கும் பல பணிகளை புரிந்து தன் வாழ்வை முழுமைப்படுத்தி நிறைவு செய்து விட்டு பிரிந்துள்ளார். இருந்த போதும் அவர் நினைவு என்றும் உங்கள் நினைவில் இடத்திற்கும் இவரது மருமகன் ஸ்ரீ ஒரு நாள் பேசிய போது மாமி இடக்கை மாமா விளக்கை என்றால் மாமி இடக்கை என்றால் அது மாதிரி மனைவியாரின் பங்களிப்புனால் அவர் தனது பொது சேவையில் முழுமையாக ஈடுபட முடிந்தது. ஏனென்றால் எங்களுக்கு வழக்கையால் நாங்கள் பேசினாலும் இடக்கை தான் அதற்கு உறுதுணையாக இருக்கு. நாங்கள் எழுதும் பொழுது பேனா பிடித்தவரும் மற்ற கை பேப்பரை பிடித்துக் கொண்டிருக்கும். அது மாதிரி அவரது குடும்பம் சிறப்பாக நடப்பதற்கு திருமதி யோகேஷ் அவர்களை நான் பங்களிப்பும் முக்கியமானது. இவர் முழுமையாக தனது பொது சேவையை தன்னை ஈடுபடுத்தி வாழ்ந்து நிறைவு செய்தது யாராலும் மறக்கவோ முடியாது. இதை பல கோணங்களிலும் எல்லாரும் பேசிக்கொள்ளும் மனம் மிகவும் நெகிழ்வாக இருந்தது. குடும்ப பிள்ளைகள் எல்லாரும் நன்றாக பேசினா இன்னும் பலர் அதை பற்றி பேச உள்ளார்கள். இந்த நிகழ்வை ஒழுங்கு செய்தவர்களுக்கு நாங்கள் அனைவரும் நன்றி கடன் பட்டுள்ளோம். நாங்கள் செலுத்த கடன் பட்டுள்ளோம்.
நன்றி அவர்கள் மனம் நிகழும்படியாக ஒரு உரையாற்றி. தேங்க்யூ. Let me now call upon Dr. Nalliah, a consultant pediatrician and who has participated in all of the endeavors so far. He's going to give us an insight to Sivananthan's high school days.
Thank you. Hello, yogis, children, and family. I think it is, we are here to celebrate Sivananthan's life here. So it is so sad that he has left a huge vacuum, and it's only now, I'm sure, you are beginning to feel, as some of us who were quite close to him. Only time can actually give some solace and peace. But he's in the best place, if you ask me, in the feet of his namesake, Lord Shiva. And I'll come back to that towards the end of my talk. And we would also like to thank, the organizers would like to thank the family's kind cooperation, without which this event would not have been possible. It has been planned for the last 3 months or so. I knew Shiva, I think you might sort of be surprised, I knew Shiva for the last 63 years. It's a long time. Most of you are not born then. Right? And he actually joined St. John's in, I think, 1957. And even though I was a bit junior to him, he was a very, very popular guy. He He is known to everyone, even though he's not a bright lad. He's just an average like me or Mahendran or whatever. He never excelled in sports. He never excelled in anything. But he excelled in one thing. His English, his Tamil, and his passion for everything is, and he was very, very friendly, ever ready to help anyone that that comes by, or even if you don't ask him, he will run to their help and help them out. He's a thorough gentleman of the highest order, very popular. But he has a sort of a peculiar attraction. I don't know. Everybody is attracted towards him, boys or girls or whatever in those days. But the Singanagam tells me that it is because his eyebrows, if you look at his eyebrows, now he'll go on. If you look at his eyebrows, it actually connects both. Right, it's connected, and that gave him a special advantage of all of us. We were sort of just on the backside anyway. When he's there, we don't go and join him anyway. He actually was committed to charities and various successful organizations and inaugurated MIOT and ELITA. Some of the members are here, it's all done and done. For East London Tamil Association was very active actually during the troubles in 1983 and whatnot. But my topic is not that. It's going to be very light-hearted. It's Sivananthan goes to St. George. Okay? So there was, he lived, I think it's 2nd Cross Street, I can't remember. And it's near Main Street. And there was a tailor called Bai. He's a Muslim chap, and he actually stitched all the shorts and shirts and all that for lots of us. There were only very few tailors at that time. So his father took him there because the uniform was blue and white. So he sort of but Sivananthan was a very smart chap, you see. And so he took him and asked him just sort of stitch a trouser that will last for 10 years. That is school career. That's a typical Nalliah sort of attitude. Okay? And also he has many brothers. And they can utilize them as well. So Sivananthan couldn't actually stop. His father actually instructed him to take it up to the knee, the shorts up to the knee, and the shirts up to below the elbow, so that okay? So that's how he actually sort of started St. George. On the first day, he was, those days we had teachers called Pulichal and Panier and Dimmer and sort of Odapotir and so many sort of Pataperal, nicknames for the teachers. And so he was allocated to the Panier's school thing, but he didn't know anything about it. But then he went into the class, and there was a chap. There was only one seat that was vacant. That was next to a chap called Sivananthan, Jayanandan. I don't know whether you know him. He's a bit of a character that nobody wants to associate with him. But then he said, the parent, right? Then he said, Sivananthan, right? Kailash. Kailash means there is snow. Snow is panic. So if the teacher asks you, what's your name? You have to say Panier. Okay, Sivananthan didn't know anything like that, but he thought he was actually telling the truth. And when the teacher asked, hey, the parent, I'm here. Okay, but this teacher he knows, but he's called Panier anyway. So he asked him, he calls everybody Naiman. Right, Naiman and then he has to sort of put his head under his chair, under his table, and wait there for 40 minutes until the class was over. And that's how, but Sivananthan was so nice, he didn't actually sort of get angry with him. He became friendly, very, very friendly with him, and had lots and lots of naughty things done with him, a couple of things I'm going to tell you. And then he actually became a friend for life until his death. So Janathan was one of his best friends. And so one of the instances we know is he actually he was not in the boarding house, but he knew almost everyone. So there is something known as a restaurant called Dilko. Can you all remember Dilko in Kasturia Road in front of the old bus stand?
Yeah.
And that's the time it was actually opened. And they on the first day, they said you pay £2.50. Yeah, and 2 rupees. So £2 rupees 50, and you can eat anything and drink anything till 12 o'clock that day. So Sivananthan got hold of it, and Janathan with him, and then Macham will go. Okay. And he didn't have the money, but Janathan was a bit rich, so he loaned the money with the promise that he would actually give it back. And so he actually went off to the place, and they filled their stomach till about 12 o'clock with ice cream and sherbets and whatever you name it, they had it. And the next day, Dilko was closed for another month because they went back. But for Sivananthan, that was a Sunday. Sivananthan did pitch up at school, no did Janathan for another week because they had diarrhea. And with the ice cream, you get salmonella because they put eggs and you get salmonella infection. And they had it, and they were sort of half the size when they came back. There's another story is that Janathan and Sivananthan were of the same size, right? And so they decided. Now we are always, those days when you have a shorts, it's the same thing that you wear to weddings or you wear two. You one wash the other, and then you wear it for the weddings or wherever you want to go. And Sivananthan and Janathan thought that we had to have a break. So they decided, collected some 5 rupees from somewhere. Those days you can't actually, there are no ready-made shorts or whatever. So they went and bought a cloth from Darham's, I think, which is beige in color. And then got it stitched by a different tailor because this tailor was known to the buyer was known to Nalliah. So they did that fine, and they wore it intermittently. For 1 week, Sivananthan will wear it, and Janathan will wear it the next week. But after some time, people started saying, "What the hell, Machan, you're wearing the same thing I the same." So what they decided was to dye it. Okay, they took the shorts to dye it to dark brown. This is typical of Sivananthan. He is prepared to take any number of risks, right? And they dyed it, and they paid him some 5 rupees for that dye. So Sivananthan was the first one to wear it, and then it went on, and then Janathan wore it. And then after about 1 month, they decided to wash it. No, those days the dye is gone. So they went and had a fight with this dyeing chap who dyes it, and then got £2.50 back because it was a month later. So Sivananthan was happy because he had to pay this Dilko $2.50, so he paid in return. That's one of the stories that's told all the time. I told you before, he's not a sportsman. He loved sports. He wanted to take part in sports, particularly with the Ariala crowd, like David Rai and others. They were bright sportsmen. Because in St. John's, if you're a sportsman, you're going to be from Ariala. But then he was a good commentator. He's good in English and Tamil, so he used to commentate to us, and we are very happy. And then he said he will write it. And then the headmaster come to know it, and he started sort of asking him to write about things. And in the magazine, he wrote about sort of the sports activities every year. And I'm not sure whether you all know, there was another paper, there was a journal, it was a paper, yeah, it's called Teapori. Have you heard of Teapori? Okay. And that is a fantastic sort of journal. And it's always sort of very, very fantastic headlines. But you read inside, there's nothing inside, but fantastic. It's like ordinal, right? Or it's like sort of, can't remember, sort of, yeah. Ordinal, உள்ளாடையும் வெளியாடையும் தெரியாது. Right? So there was lots of headlines that Sivananthan actually cleared, and then he became the sports editor for Teapori. But then Teapori was sort of during that sort of, I think you remember the days when Koglamba case, and he was never in school, you see. He was all over the place, and then he was as those days the children of people started school at the age of 3, and then by the time they go to O levels, you're 14, your brain is not mature, so you fail A levels and then O levels, and then you go to Special 5. It's a class called in St. John's called Special 5. The people who go to Special 5 are the people, the failures. But it is where you actually became a man, right? You are taught everything, because it's a mixture of everything. You're molded into a man. So Sivananthan, actually, he got hold of these people, and then by then he has become the sort of editor for the magazine every year we publish at school. And then he went on to got through the exams and went on to the advanced level, and then he went to Special 6 again. He failed the first attempt, like most of us. I think it's not something sort of, nowadays I think boys and girls will be ashamed if we tell you that we never got through the exams, but we sort of went through a bit of a, what do you call it, our interests are different anyway. But we went on and then passed the exam, then went to the medical school, and I was part of one of them anyway. Anyway, that is Sivananthan St. George. But he is actually, I think somebody said, religion is not his forte, except for Nallur Thiruvilla. And that he went for something else. We sat on the class or whatever, and have a chat and sort of pass comments to various people who passed that way. And he never passes any comments to any girls. He's actually, I don't know how he got married actually, he was sort of anti-girls. And anyway, he was well educated. His father was a very religious man and a head teacher in various schools, and so is his mother. And they had this book called Upanishad. It is one of the best Vedas. It's before the Rig Veda and all the others. And he has read that, and only one page he read. You know what he read? No, you don't have to go to the temple to get to God. There are various ways of doing it. One is you dedicate yourself to God. The other one is to go and pay penance and whatnot. The other way, the easiest way, to do service to the people, help other people. And that's what he did. He helped the community. He's helped many, many, many people. And he took risks that you and I won't even take risks. And he was very successful. And that is why I think the God thought, now this man has done so much, and I think he has done enough for him to come to me now. And he took him a bit earlier than what the family and what he would have expected. Anyway, I'm sure he is in the safe hands, Yoga and children. So I hope we will sort of we will celebrate his life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nami. May I call upon Dr. Steve Hugh, his erstwhile colleague, to come and elaborate on his work. May I be associated with him? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me to be here, and I'm starting. Yes. Thank you so much for asking me to be here, and I'm most honored to be with you to share this occasion. It occurs to me that I may be the only one here who's never been to Sri Lanka. And we've heard a lot about Siva's love for his family, for nature, for culture, for his professional associations. I'd like to make tribute to one of his other passions, and also his achievements in postgraduate education in the United Kingdom. I've known Siva and his family for about 30 years. We actually became general practitioners around the same time, back in '89, in Enfield, Harrogate, although we never actually practiced together as doctors. Our paths actually first crossed when, at that time, this horrible word called medical audit landed on general practice. It was much feared at the time as a tool to check upon what doctors were doing. And Dr. Siva and I did our best to actually shall I say, undemonize this subject and actually help our colleagues to use it to their advantage. We actually reshaped, now called Continuing Professional Development, CPD, those days called Continuing Medical Education, CME, reshaped that to include what we call self-directed learning groups. That was actually Siva's idea. And gained recognition to collect these brownie points, which GPs needed to. And starting from a very local small group of 6-8 doctors, he started expanding this, spreading the idea, and he called it a movement. And he used words like the ripple effect. And this ripples made the movement grow and grow until it became recognized nationally. And we presented his work, our work, at conferences both national and international. And you see, this is the World Conference of Family Doctors Conference in Finland in 2001. So he did some workshops, he spoke to the people there, and he took this work very seriously, but he was also able to have some fun outside that. This is the Olympic Stadium back in the 50s, which Finland hosted the Olympic Games. And we just wandered around a bit. Now this picture, this is a small anecdote. So we, those days in Finland was eating cold fish every day. And in the end he said, look, I'm going to get fish poisoning. We've got to get some Indian or Chinese food. We didn't find any Indian restaurants, but we found this little Chinese joint. So we said, sit down and we looked at the menu. It's all very long, Finnish words, all 50 letters long. But this blonde waitress spoke English, so she explained to us, and we picked the dish randomly, which is very odd. It was beef cooked with cabbage and sweet corn. I still remember that. So we tasted it, and it didn't taste anything like Chinese food or anything anyway. But we hungry ate it, and I said, I don't know what province this food came from. I don't know. I thought I knew all Chinese food. He said, why don't we meet the chef? So we asked the waitress to bring the chef. And when he came out, we nearly died. This gentleman with very dark skin, tight curly hair. He was a Moroccan. And I said, well, man, what are you doing here? He said, well, I came to do a master's in engineering. I got stuck here. And they didn't give me a job, so I went to work as a kitchen hand in a Chinese restaurant. And I observed and I decided, oh, well, my own man, the Finnish food, don't know any of the Chinese food. I'll be all right. So that was it. And we also wrote an article and then wrote a part of a book, you see. And we didn't write the whole book, we wrote a chapter in it. And next slide, please. That's the beginning of the chapter, which is, you can still see in the bookshelves. And we used to meet on in his house back in Clay Hall, Milford, to think about things, how to take things forwards. And he used to give me a little drink when I arrived. He said, this is very good for opening up the blood-brain vessels. Well, we stopped drinking after some time, but we didn't drink much, but we both gave up alcohol. But his office was lined with books, not just on medicine, but a range of things on education, on management, on philosophy, on religion, and of course, medical books. And I think that reflects on the breadth and the depth of his thinking. And he often quoted ideas in his work, like the 80-20 principle, the Hawthorne principle, and so on. And yet, to me, he was ever such a humble person. And he used to tell me how, in his homeland, 1,000 years ago, society was a very equal place. And Siva's approach to people was always from the grassroots, about being honest and reflective, but in a safe environment. And just to explain a bit more about him, a personal word about him. And myself, after struggling for many years of general practice, educational projects, I once took my eye off the ball and got stuck in some trouble started by other people in the practice. And once people hear about these things, they all walked away, they wanted to take a phone call from me. But Siva, one of the few, where she came down and said, look, I know you didn't do anything, but that's fine. And he actually, over the years, helped me to stand on my feet. And in the last 2 years, I've had the opportunity to do some development work in his practice. And I could see that he used the same methods to help quite a number of colleagues who got mild difficulties, whether it's personal or professional. And he always spoke about treating people with respect and going the extra mile. That's what he always told his team colleagues. I happen to know he did not frequent the temple, but I believe he's someone who actually practiced the principles from his heart. And to me, he was an intelligent and wise colleague, a mentor, a family friend who lives just up the road from me, and above all, a friend in need. Thank you.
Thank you very much to you. It seems to be my opportunity to say a few words. As we are running out of time, so I'll try and be as concise as possible. My initial intention was trying to give a synopsis of Siva's early working days in Jaffna, which to me formed a lot of his character to work on a number of endeavors later in his life. Though I knew Siva in the medical school, it was in Jaffna where we worked together that we had a great opportunity to get to know each other. He had this inherent charm and quickly became very popular all around the hospital. As lots of comments were made earlier, that how helpful he is to the ordinary people. irrespective of their power or position. And that made him extremely popular. And he became a dominant face in the hospital soon. This was in the early 70s. And he became the regional secretary of the Government Medical Officers Association for Jaffna. And his commitment, devotion and passion to achieve objectives was very effective. For anyone who gets friendly with him gets immediately bitten by the same devotion to do that. And during this period in Jaffna, the society itself was going through a tumultuous change, because that was the time, the mid-70s, when the Tamil leader S.J. Vichalvanayagan passed away in our care in the hospital. And also, which a lot of people would have heard about, might not have experienced, there was this thing about standardization of university entrance. And lots of youngsters in Jaffna were affected by that. All of a sudden, their entry to the university took a nosedive because of this sudden change. And this was felt as a little unrest just beneath the surface and constantly bubbling about as anger. And on top of this, there was a lot of shortage of food, because the government's policies were making imports difficult. And in the midst of this, the youngsters started concentrating on agricultural means, and cash crops were very much in production, which brought about a certain amount of prosperity to the peninsula. In the middle of that, we were working in the hospital, and naturally we constantly discussed all these changes that were going on. And as you would have heard, Siva is very interested in Tamil politics, and this was one of the topics that constantly came about in all our discussions. And while this was happening, then came that 1977 communal ethnic disturbances, or there was a pogrom which brought a number of Tamils scuttling to the north as refugees from the south. And on top of that, there were a lot of Tamil doctors who were working in the south and in north central province, also descended to Jaffna Hospital, because that was the place they were asked to report, since they were not safe where they were working. In addition, there were a number of medical students from both Kandy and Colombo also ended up in Jaffna Hospital. Now therefore, all of a sudden, we had the hospital full of doctors and medical students walking around, and Siva was the GMOA secretary. You can imagine the chaos. Therefore, but he never faltered. He put his heart and soul into it and organized everything and got the doctors a special common room where they could sit. This was done by clearing up a disused ward, by washing and getting furniture for the place. This was to accommodate the doctors. Then also he went around the hospital, got the consultants to accommodate these additional medical students who were there, to give them tutorials. And therefore all these things, he did it with the help of his friends. But this was something that he was so motivated to get it going. He just didn't give up as an impossible task. And on top of that, there was one little incident that had gone unsurfaced. But I must mention it because this was a very crucial point at which he made a difference. There was a doctor working in Jaffna Hospital who had a romantic relationship with one of the nurses who were from the south, was working in Jaffna Hospital. And this lady, when this ethnic riots occurred, did not want to go back to her home in the south. But the government ordered all the southern staff to return to their homes and not to stay in the north. Now all of a sudden this lady was found missing in the quarters and nobody knew where she was. And naturally this created a lot of stir, and the state was very interested in finding out what happened, and they wanted to blame someone for this one's absence. And the worst was thought that had happened. But Siva quietly went and met this doctor and had a long chat with him and convinced him of the greater good for him to come out with the information. And then we managed to locate the girl who was being housed in a private residence by this doctor. And she safely went back to her home, and a big ethnic clash was averted by this move. And these are all instances where Siva made a difference. Then again, after a gap, I met him in London, where we worked together at the New York General Hospital. And that was the time we had the next program, that's the 83 Black July. Again, Siva stepped in, and we went and joined the Central British Fund for Tamil Refugees Rehabilitation, which was active at that time, to collect so much funds which were sent over to the affected people in the north and east of Sri Lanka. And because the information gathering was so unreliable at that time, we mooted the Tamil Information Center, which took over the job of getting all this information collected. This became a very focal point during the early 80s, as that was the only reliable source of information that we could supply to the rest of the world. This motivated Siva to go even further, and then he thought of local organizations, and that was the birth of East London and Essex Tamil organization called EDITA. And that was another organization that he founded. It didn't stop there. Then he even wanted a center where the Tamils could meet and mingle, irrespective of their origin of, as a country of birth. That was the so-called Tamil House, which we erected on Rumford Road, and that went for many years, uniting the Tamils under one banner. Therefore, these are all these projects that Siva was involved in. And of course, he didn't stop there. As we heard from Sarada, we went on to form a professional organization, that is Medical Institute of Tamils, which is even now thriving and bringing our dreams to bear. Now, having said all this, as Anbalagan said earlier, Vayathur Valvangu Valbavan, Vanurai Tevathur Vayathur. He who on this earth has lived his life in an exemplary state, as an example to others, will be placed among the gods who dwell in heaven. And that is exactly where Siva is today. As Nami so touchingly told us. Goodbye, Siva. Now, there are few expressed interest in saying a few words from the delegates. Dr. Navratnam wanted to say a few words.
late Dr. Siva, family and friends. I have several reasons to be here today. One is that Siva and I believed in the same manner, the need for the Tamils to work together to get freedom in Sri Lanka. And there is also a family relationship where my wife's sister Rani married Siva's brother-in-law. But more than all that, my friendship with Siva started in London. I did not know him in Sri Lanka because I left Sri Lanka in 1968 to the UK. I came to know Siva when he was a GP in North London and knew of his work along with Mahendran and others with MIOT. As you know, I have been a pioneer in Scott, which started in 1977. But MIOT worked alongside us, getting more doctors involved and doing charities in the north and east of Sri Lanka. And Siva, I won't talk for long, impressed me as an honest, hard-working, a person of integrity, and a person with determination, and a person who does things rather than theorizes. So I have a great respect for him, and I bid him farewell now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nalliah. I thought you wanted to say a few. Dr. Kamma wanted to say a few words about Siva.
Hello, Yogesh and family. I have known Siva from the time he was a schoolboy. I saw a picture of his as a schoolboy. That's when I first met him. It's strange because Siva had his primary, no, not the other, the young one.
So just next to that.
That's it. That's what. That's when I first met him. That's how he looked. This was in Jaffna. Although Siva was in Jaffna for his primary and secondary education, and although I had it in Colombo, we used to spend all our holidays in Jaffna. And all my cousins went either to St. John's or Chulukuri or Burmadi. And I think through my cousin, I think Johnnyans will know, he was DM Selvanagam, he was a cricket and athletic captain at St. John's. And he was friendly with Siva. And through him we met, and I don't want to go through the details, but Nami has told you all about his school day escapades. But I knew Siva in various aspects differently. First, as a student, as a schoolboy. Second, in the medical school, he was 1 year senior to me. And later on, as a colleague in Haringey for 25 years. And finally, as a member of my holiday group. My knows what's happening. So as a GP, I had the highest respect for Siva. I was a consultant in audiovisual medicine, and he sends all his patients to me, and every patient has only the highest praise for Siva as a brilliant GP, very kind man, and they all loved him. And so during when we meet regularly in the postgraduate meetings, and he was very interested in Dr. Hughes said about CMV and CPD, and he was a praiser for the GP. So he was very, very interested in that aspect of medical education. And he got to know from either you or Mahendra Raja that you told him, that I am involved in organizing tours for doctor friends. And he told me, Tamba, next time include me. So in fact, I was at that time planning the Cambodia-Vietnam trip. And he said, yes, I am coming. And he was trying to get one of his brothers-in-law and sister-in-law to join, but they couldn't come. So I'm only going to tell you a few incidents of the holiday with Siva, right? So when we first went to Cambodia, there are certain places he loved, right? We went to the Angkor Wat temple. He was absolutely delighted with seeing and the history behind it. And can you remember we went to that, we had to climb a hill to go to a river where the 100 palaces, right?
Yeah.
Can you remember that?
Yeah.
We struggled, went up there.
1,000 Sverlingams.
1,000 Sverlingams, right? So, Siva told me, Majan, they are coming all this way. This must have been before IVF, right? I said, yeah. Because the story was that people who couldn't have children, they went up to that river, bathed in it, and mysteriously they got pregnant. Right? So I told Siva, you and I know that's all rubbish, right? So anyway, that was one, and we came down. I think, did you climb up to the thing, Yogesh? Yeah, it was quite a difficult climb, right? But it was fantastic. And then, what he didn't like was...
Panting away.
Yeah, we were all panting. What he didn't like was the Pol Pot Museum. He said, I know. He was so aghast by the atrocities and all those skulls. So he didn't like that. But he all, of course, liked the massage that we got. Right?
He went to sleep.
He went to sleep, right? So, of course, I was fair. I got the ladies to have a foot massage, right? And they would have played football after that because they were so relaxed. And the men fell asleep during the full body massage. And Siva was one. And so that was great. But when we went to yeah, I come to that. When we went to Vietnam, the food was not very good, right? We had to select hotels where we could eat. And we finally found one restaurant where we could eat, but only problem is, the chefs leave at 8 o'clock, so you have to go early, order your food, so the last day, we all went and sat down and we ordered our dishes. So I asked Siva, what are you eating? Nandu machan. Okay. So I looked at the menu, $45 one nandu dish, $90 for the two of them, right? And I said, why? Papa, these people are struggling, that is his generosity, right? So he ordered the nandu. Nandu came. The nandu was bigger than the plate. Huge nandu. And he looking at me, I'm looking at him. He should have said, why is it too late? Right? You eat. So he struggled. I don't know how much he ate. Right? Then we came off. And then we were at the beach resort, right? And that time the cyclone and water, and I can remember we had to rush out to the restaurant. Then they said that they don't have laundry service, right? So can you actually put the thing in the bag and there's a man who will come collect it? So we all did that, and we all went there. We were all asked to come and collect it. We collected it. Then in the evening, Siva told me, Acha, this will be very expensive, no? I said, why? I paid only $6. $6? He charged $70 to me. $70 for a few trousers. Why? Show me the bill. His accent, he wants $17, but Siva gave $70. And I said, well, Siva, that is your generosity, don't worry. Yeah? So that is how Siva was. He was an absolutely great guy. And he then told me, right, I'm going to select the next holiday. I said, fine, you tell me where. He said, Cuba. So we arranged, we went to Cuba, we had a great time there. And can you remember the Vinales? They told me one problem in Cuba is you can have all the rooms, everything booked. When you go there, they say no rooms, right? So you have to be prepared for that. So when the capital was fine, right? But when we went to Vinales, problem, all the rooms are given away, and they said they are going to put us all, 10 families, into individual guest houses. So I was taken to the first one. This lady doesn't know a word of English. Small house, small room. I came back and said, we are not going anywhere. If you don't find a hotel for us tonight, we are all going to sleep in this bus. So finally they got that hotel, Colombo. So we had a great time, and Siva was always keen to join back, right? And unfortunately, well, fate had it, and he's not anymore. So Siva was a friend for a long, long time. And after we left, after he qualified in 1971, I met him after 25 years when I took up the consultancy, and we renewed our friendship, and I'm sad that he's not there anymore. And I have known the families of Siva, I think Ati and Rishan, right, came to see me, and I think attended your elder sister's wedding long years ago. And I think that's your eldest grandson, yeah? Right, okay, lovely, thank you.
Thank you for giving us all these now, I think we have come to the end of the talks, and Dr. Ratneswaran is Dr. Ratneswaran here. He's going to give the vote of thanks.
Dr. Sivananthan phoned me this morning at about 9 o'clock to whether I could propose a vote of thanks, because he was the main organizer, therefore it's appropriate someone else does a vote of thanks. So while I agreed to do so, I also want to pick a few things that which are the highlights of his life. First of all, I was in for the privilege of working with him as one of the directors of Tamil Innovation Center, and also one of the committee member of the Medical Institute of Tamil Doctors, and also he worked with the Center for Community Development. So I'd like to welcome Mrs. Sivananthan and the family of late Mr. Sivananthan, and his brothers who are here, and the directors of Tamil Innovation Center, and the members and colleagues of the Medical Institute of Tamils, and all other friends who are here, his wider extended family of Dr. Sivananthan. Now, one of the highlights that I think Dr. Nalliah highlighted his journalistic skill and so on, and those who are here, the doctors who are here at the time, 1969 is a year that Colombo Medical College celebrated the 100th anniversary. And I think that here Dr. Mahendran Nirmanathan and Mahendra Raja, and also Dr. Sivakumar and Shanti Sivakumar are here, who were at the time at the contemporaries of Dr. Sivananthan, and produced an excellent souvenir of that centenary celebration. And that's the first time, first time we entered the medical college, met him as a colleague in the medical school as a fellow student. Then subsequently, that it's been already highlighted, but I want to re-emphasize that he was, along with Mahendran and late Kandasamy, who was unfortunately killed, and then Father Patinal and others, established the Tamil Innovation Center in London in 1983. And it's one of the pioneering work they did. And if you all don't know much of the Tamil Innovation Center, it has the work. And he had done the very seminal documents and books they have published. And they're still ahead of the time on the militarization of the Northeast, land grab, and the 13th Amendment, and so on, still reverberating in the Tamil community at the moment. So these are the work done by the Town Medical Center, and he was one of the directors along with Mahendran, and some of the directors are here. Kanaka Sundram, Ramanath and others are here today. And so that's one of the major work they did, and still it continued to work. And he collaborated closely with late Mr. Varadakumar, who passed away a couple of years ago. And subsequently that I was involved with him and Dr. Selvaratnam and others, and Mr. Sivabala Sundram, who was at the time with the chair of the medical department doctors. We done one of the major work at the time in 1994. We brought together from all the field workers from north and east of the country, England, the bishops and so on, for a conference of victims of war in Sri Lanka. Is one of the pioneering work. And interestingly, one of the papers submitted by Dr. Nalliah at the time of a resource allocation to the different medical schools in the north and east, and north at the time only Jaffna Medical School, and the south, the gross disparity between the resource allocation to the medical institutes or medical colleges at the time. And recently we want to revisit this particular item of the resource allocation in the northeast of the provincial council and the south, and there's not enough data is available. So this one of the pioneering, the seminal work Dr. Nalliah done for the conference is still one of the documents that we have available. And that's one of the books which Medical Institute Doctors, this was done in collaboration with the Tamil Influence Center, Medical Institute Doctors, and the Tamil Refugee Relief Organization of the California. Is one of the most successful, and one of the seminal work was published in this particular conference proceeding. If anybody want any copies, I brought some copies as a remembrance of Siva's work at the time, because Siva and Selvaratnam, Mahendran, all those with Dr. Mr. Sivasundaram, the gynecologist, gave them good leadership at the time for the conference. So we must remember that particular one of the important landmark of the Medical Institute Doctors. And also today you will listen to the different facets of Dr. Sivananthan's his life and work, and we are here to celebrate his work and his life as well. And I'd like to thank, and the other thing I must say, that on behalf of the family, of Dr. Sivananthan's family, and the Medical Institute Doctors, and the Tamil Influence Center, I'd like to thank the organizers, mainly that Mahendran, Selvaratnam and Nirvinathan, for taking the opportunity to organize this. But I don't think they are going to meet similar meeting like this. It's a very rare occasion. We are met together after several years as a Tamil community, and credit goes to them. They looked for, searching for all those people who are associated or affiliated with Dr. Sivananthan, and then they brought them together today. So it's a very great achievement, and we should like to thank Dr. Selvaratnam, Dr. Mahendran and Nirvinathan for creating this opportunity, creating the environment today. Along with them, 3 more other colleagues have sponsored this meeting today with our refreshment and everything else. So we'd like to thank them as well, please. And we'd like to thank our Swaminarayan trustees for offering this hall, and the managers and the caretaker today. And you all know about Swaminarayan organization. They are one of the most formidable organizations in the UK. I don't know how to describe that, but anyway, they are the most wealthiest organization.
Close-knit organization.
In United Kingdom. So we are grateful to them for offering this place. And Sindhu Mahal provided the food for us today. And Siva, Sivaraja and his team, and Hari, who provide the audio and audio-visual arrangements today for us. And mainly the speakers, they are quite divergent speakers with different backgrounds. They did really enlighten us and make it very lively today, and real celebration by hearing from them and listening to them. It was a real celebrations. And thank you, all of you. And finally, Harry, where are you, Harry? member of Dr. Sivananthan, but we have been one of the most instrument of helping Mahendran, Selvaratnam and Nirmalan forward in this function. And really thank you, Hari, on behalf of all of us. And thank you. Yeah. If I missed anyone, my apologies.
Thank you very much. I think the food is now going to be served. Is there anything else, Selva, that need to be done? Yeah, right. I have to get permission from Dr. Selvaratnam to give it. Yeah, sorry, Sri wants to say something.
I'm Sridharan. I'm Dr. Sivananthan's eldest son-in-law. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for making the time today and coming to pay your respects to Dr. Sivananthan, the late Dr. Sivananthan. I'd also like to thank Dr. Nirmalan, Dr. Mahendran, and Dr. Selvaratnam for taking the initiative and motivation to doing this, and also to Harry in the background. I know that he was coordinating all the emails and phone calls the last 3 months. In respect to Dr. Sivananthan, I can't say very much today because there's so much to say about him, except that he was extremely hardworking, very kind and generous man. I had a father for 20 years, and this year I have been part of this family for 20 years. And I didn't think I would have a second father in my life, but he was my second father. And so it's been a great loss to our family to lose him. But I know that he is with Lord Siva now. And in respect to that, I'm going to just sing a small stanza, which was one of the first stanzas I learnt, which he used to like. So I'm just singing it. Normally it's sung at the start or something, but I'm going to sing it anyway. Palum telitenum pagum parpumivai nalum kalandunakkanan taduvai kolam shay tungat karimugattu turmaniyai nee enakku shankar tamal mudram tam. I think that stanza, written by Abhaya, for me, it encompasses everything about him. He loved food, he loved music, he loved Lord Ganesha, he loved elephants. And for me, that encompasses Uncle Siva for me. On behalf of Yogesh Auntie, Anusha, Adi, myself, Murali, Krishant, and his 4 grandchildren, thank you so much for coming today. He would have loved to have known you'd all come, I know that. And so I would like to thank you. And his last thing to me was that he was suffering a lot at the end. I know that all of you couldn't see him, but he spoke to us every day on the phone. And I can tell you at 11 o'clock every morning, we would speak. And even at the end, when he couldn't really speak, he still picked up the phone and he spoke what he could. So he's in a lot better place, and he didn't want to be a burden to any of us on this earth. I know that. He told me that. And he was so clever and intelligent. He knew exactly what was going on, and he knew exactly what he wanted for himself and for his family. So we have to live with that decision and go forward. So in respect to him, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you. Before we move for lunch, just to remind you again, as I mentioned at the beginning, the friends and the family would like to create a lasting memory for Siva in the form of an award at his high school, St. John's. And there are funds being collected for that. Whatever people would like to donate is fine with us. And that will all go to the school in his name. Thank you. Bye. The lunch is
in a line.
சாப்பாடு அப்படி நல்லா இருக்கு. நானும்
இதுக்குள்ள கோவிட் வெரைட்டி ரியலி ஸ்ட்ராங் மாவு நின்றுதுன்னா பார்த்துருவோம். மாவு தான் இந்த வாங்க அடிச்சு பார்ப்போம்.
Yeah, I mean, she came back last May. I think she'll probably stay for another year, and then maybe try and go back again.
He'll wash it, we'll wash it.
As before, Abby got married the first time.
everything they make you really. I remember when I got some blocks of pound, everything's everywhere.
It's still like that.
You now feel a stranger.
It's so nice, like bumping into all of these people after a long time as well. Really lovely.
I need help from you. I'm going to take tea plates here.
Sure. Yeah.
I was talking all along, so I need help from you. That's all. There's no free lunch here. If you want to one talking dinner, you know, yeah? That's one thing you learn in economics. There's no free thing as dinner, you learn That's from my mother-in-law.
Okay. Any more? No. This is all vegetarian. Yeah, sorry.
I went to Dubai to my friends and he's a Gujarati guy, and they're all vegetarian, right? When the food they eat is like for 5,000.
When was that? Recently?
No, 20 years ago. And when I came up, they said, oh, vegetarians go this way. Then the other place, oh my God, luckily they have no Then they said, vegan go this way.
Wow, really
They said they were going to the car.
ஃபேஸ் டு ஃபேஸ் மீட்டிங் பார்க்கலாம்.
கண்டிப்பா என்ன அந்த சவுண்ட் சிஸ்டத்துக்கு என்னது எவங்க இந்த சவுண்ட் வர ஓப்பன் பண்ணிடுவாங்க.